Welcome to ANU Indonesia Project Global Seminar. My name is Arianto Patunru, and I'm hosting this program with Nuke Mulyani and Gema Satria. We acknowledge the first Australians and pay our respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. We are grateful for the support from the Australian National University and the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. As I mentioned in the last webinar, we now have two series, namely COVID Recovery and GESI, Gender Equity and Social Inclusion series. And the seminar today ticks both boxes. It is about gender insights from the COVID-19 Digital Merchant Survey. And in particular, it examines how female-owned businesses on e-marketplace perform and how the government and platforms could help them. We are very grateful to be able to bring back Dr. Maria Monica Wihardja from the World Bank to share the key findings. Monica is a frequent speaker to our webinar. In fact, this is the third time she presents. So thank you, Monica. And today she will be accompanied by his colleague, Putu Sanji Wibisana, who was also involved in the survey. So as usual, we will have a question and answer session after the talks. But if you want, you can write your question anytime on the Q&A box, not on the chat box. We will attend to them in the Q&A session. And please also kindly fill a little polling when it appears on your screen. We need this to improve our series. So let's get to it. Let me invite Monica to start the presentation.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to be back here for the third time. And today, I also have my colleague Sanji to co-present with me our latest findings, specifically focusing on gender perspective of our survey that we conducted together with Insights, the COVID-19 Digital Merchant Survey. Next. As we all know, we've been going through this pandemic for more than a year, and still yet we have not seen the end to this. Many emerging market economies are still deep in the throes of the battle against this virus, and despite the arrival of vaccines globally, we're still in this pandemic, and Indonesia is no exception to this. With the rise of the more variants of the virus, many experts fear that the COVID-19 will never disappear. As such, it becomes more important that we help prepare Indonesian MSME to survive, but also thrive in such a context. In crisis time, our other study shows that many women are being drawn into the labor market, mostly into low-quality jobs, most probably because of necessity. And many of them were drawn into the sales and trade sectors. And many of them actually trade online in e-commerce. And for this particular presentation, we examine how female-owned businesses on e-marketplace platforms perform and how the government and platforms could help them survive and thrive during the pandemic and beyond. Some key findings. First, we found that merchants increasingly use e-commerce as their primary source of income in their households. And secondly, female merchants were younger and more educated. They're clustered into traditionally feminine products such as women's fashion, care products, care and beauty products, baby and mother's products, and F&B. Many of them are homemakers and students. They had similar business size compared to male merchants, unlike in the analog world. But their heterogeneities among female merchants themselves. For example, new female merchants outperform pre-existing female merchants. So there's something intrinsic about the new female merchants that are only coming in during the pandemic. Female students and part-time employees were more likely to start e-commerce after the pandemic compared to male merchants. Female merchants were more likely to switch product categories, which was associated to higher sales. So female students are more versatile in terms of adjusting the products that they sell in order to adjust to the changing consumer demands. Female full-time employees were less likely to close business during the pandemic compared to male merchants. So there are heterogeneities even among female merchants themselves. Although preferences over business support programs were similar, there were differences in preferences and utilization of government assistance programs. More female merchants found cash assistance as the most preferred government assistance compared to male merchants. Female merchants were more likely to use government cash assistance for savings compared to male merchants. And this is a snapshot about our survey. So it's a 20-minute survey blasted through Shopee in apps. The target population was merchants with 30 or more transactions. So we're targeting more serious merchants, not like one-off merchants, since they joined 30 or more transactions since they joined the platform. And also this is to match our previous surveys target population that we conducted with Bukalapak. The survey was open between December 21st to December 25th, 2020. And within these 5 days, we collected response from 15,238 respondents. We analyzed the survey using calibration weighting techniques to represent the target population by provincial location. Their November 2020 sales on Shopee to proxy for their online business size, and also their highest selling product category in November 2020. So how big is female-owned e-commerce business in Indonesia? The short answer is it's small. Although the incidence among female entrepreneurs who join e-commerce almost tripled in the last 3 years. So in 2020, 7.5% of Indonesian female entrepreneurs, equivalent to about 1.25 million, used e-commerce in the last 3 months. And this number increased from only 2.7% in 2017. And interestingly, this incidence among female entrepreneurs joining e-commerce is higher than the incidence among male entrepreneurs. Who are these female merchants? Digital merchants were almost even gender split, even leaning towards more females. 56% of our respondents weighted are females. And this is in contrast with the 61-39 split of male-females in the labor force. Female merchants are younger. They are more likely to be of non-school childbearing age, where over half of them are at the age between 25 and 34 years old. While in the labor force, male group appears slightly younger. And interestingly, merchants on the platform are more educated than general workforce. And female merchants are more educated than male merchants on the platform. Majority of female merchants have upper secondary or college education. So the two facts that they are of the childbearing age and also female merchants are very educated, it might be a sign that these female merchants are actually educated workers who are inhibited to join the mainstream economy because, for example, childcare responsibilities. A quarter of female merchants were homemakers. while 59.3% of male merchants are self-employed, only 40% of female merchants are self-employed. There are a lot more homemakers among female merchants than male merchants. 6.3% of female merchants are students. Using the National Social Economic Survey, SUSENAS, 38% of female e-commerce entrepreneurs defined as female workers age 15 or above use e-commerce for selling goods and services in the past 3 months and work in retail sectors, and self-employed or employer with temporary or permanent workers were homemakers, defined as those who spend the most amount of time doing domestic work. Female merchants had fewer dependents than male merchants. And 60% of female merchants use e-commerce as a source of supplementary income in their household. So they're not primary breadwinners in the households. While 61% of male merchants were both the breadwinners in their household and using e-commerce as their primary income, only 35% of female merchants are. 40% of female merchants, no, go ahead, Sanji, the next slide. Between 2019 and 2020, e-commerce has increasingly become a primary source of household income for both male and female merchants. Among female merchants surveyed in both 2019 and 2020, noted that it was a different survey in 2019 conducted by Shopee alone. The share of female merchants who were main breadwinners and used e-commerce as their primary source of income has increased from 21% to 30%. So what is their business profile like? Female merchants have businesses that are similar in size to those of male merchants. And this is in contrast with the enterprise population more generally, where male-owned businesses are larger than female-owned businesses, even if we restricted it to those internet-using businesses. So on the left-hand side, we see that 93% of female-owned non-agriculture enterprises are micro enterprises in 2016, while only 86.7% of male-owned non-agriculture enterprises are micro enterprises. And similarly, on the right-hand side, on the right-hand side graph, even if we restrict it to internet-using non-agriculture enterprises, we see that male-owned internet-using non-agriculture enterprises are larger on average than female-owned internet-using non-agriculture enterprises. And what kind of product categories that they sell? Female merchants are clustered into traditionally feminine products such as women's fashion, baby and mother products, care and beauty products, and F&B. And according to our survey, we also see that they have been selling online longer than male merchants. So as you can see from this graph, so male and female merchants are clustered into some product categories. So female merchants are clustered into more traditionally feminine product categories, as already mentioned, women's fashion, F&B, care and beauty, baby and mother's products. These are products that they themselves use and know about. While male merchants are clustered into more masculine product categories such as automotive, electronics, handphone, and computer, and men's fashion. So why do female merchants self-select into traditionally feminine products? There are two hypotheses here. The first one is related to occupational segregation. This product sorting of female clustered and male clustered product categories is in line with the evidence of occupational segregation, which is omnipresent throughout entrepreneurship and labor markets around the world. A few studies on the issues of women entrepreneurs self-selecting into less profitable sectors due to social norm can be found in many literatures. And the second hypothesis is the lack of market information. This drives women to sell products that they only products that they themselves use and know about. Okay, let me give now the floor to my colleague Sanji to present the rest of the presentation.
Okay, so thank you, Monica, for the opening of this presentation. So so I would like to continue on focusing on how did female merchants with pre-existing business before COVID perform, and generally how do these two different group of merchants, female and male merchants, compare in general in terms of their business performance. So the finding that we have from our survey that we are interested in observing 3 periods of time. So first is the February 2020, so the business performance of e-commerce before the pandemic strikes. And then the second one in April 2020, so the first time when the immediate time when the COVID start to strike Indonesia and restrictions are starting to be in place. And then the third one in November 2020 to see the effect of easing down restrictions on sales performance. So we try to compare this 3 time period on seeing the differences in performance between male and female. And to sum up, just to quickly sum up, female merchants perform less well and compared to their male counterpart, even before and during the pandemic period, in terms even in both their online and total sales. So starting with the pre-pandemic level in February 2020, female merchant sales appear to be already inferior to those of male merchants. So for example, here in the left-hand side, you can see that the total sales in February 2020, female versus male, where the thick red line is the male one and the pink one is the female one. You can see that in terms of cumulative distribution function, the male merchants almost perform in all distributions, they recorded a higher level of sales here, and even on the top online sales as well. On the right hand side here, we can see that male has a higher level of sales here. And moving on to this trend continues in April 2020 when the first COVID-19 surge hit the country. Still, we observe that male performance are superior compared to female, and still carries on until the restrictions of COVID has been eased starting in November 2020. So we still see the pattern where male merchants have a superior performance compared to the female merchants, even in total and online sales. So the question is that what kind of factors drive this difference between male and female merchant? Is it because of due to the nature of male versus female itself, or is there any kind of explainable by other factors? So what we have found is that this thing could be partly explained by the differences in the distribution of employment status and the choices of product categories between male and female merchants. So to start with, what we know is that being a homemaker and selling some traditionally feminine products were associated with lower sales. So basically, if you are being a homemaker and you also sell online, so this will take some time from this will take some effort and extra effort that needed because of the additional responsibilities from being a homemaker, and people cannot really focus on selling online, and this impact negatively on their sales performance. And as we know that homemaker, as slides that have been presented by Monica before, we see that homemaker are more prevalent among women rather than men. So because of more women are being a homemaker compared to men, so we can see that they have less opportunity to focus on their e-commerce business. Thus, it can act as a hypothesis why this is associated with lower sales. And also because female merchants are self-selecting into product categories that are associated with lower sales, they also tend to perform less. And why does this type of female preferred products has lower sales that compared to the one that has been chosen by the male? First is that this type of products that has been chosen by female, they tend to be low value items compared to, say, automotive and electronics. So for example, food and beverage, there obviously has less value per item compared to, let's say, if you are selling electronics or gadgets, something like that. And because of this low value per items, it will result to higher competition because the entry barrier to this type of market is relatively low compared to high value items, which result to higher competition, resulting to lower average sales per merchant. Because we know that in during the pandemic, when the supply of goods is higher because of the lot of people are flocking into the e-commerce, but the demand is not that high because the income of people is impacted by the pandemic. So this will result in lower average sales per merchants. And during the pandemic also, women tend to reduce their own consumptions, resulting in lower demand for feminine products. So for example, like women who are previously using some kind of skincare, maybe they are trying to reduce this consumption of this item because they have to reprioritize their consumptions to what their family actually needs. And then other less observable factors also might explain the rest of differences in sales performance. So the things that we do not capture here yet in the survey, for example, like the construct that female merchants are mostly entrepreneurs by necessity. So females, they tend to join the e-commerce not because of they want to join the formal labor force, but it is just an act of merely contributing to the family income, but not without needing to enter the formal labor market. And this has been found in the literature, and also something that we also found in this e-commerce landscape is that it is used by females as a way to return to labor market. So not to actually enter in the labor market, but as a pathway to return to labor market. And also social norms might hamper the performance of female entrepreneurs here because of responsibility of childcare that has been a burden for women, especially in Indonesia, which reduce the time available for a woman to be allocated in e-commerce or other income generating activities. And this continue to affect limits women choices, especially in the absence or shortage of care economy in Indonesia. So if there is no one in the family that care for the elder or for the children, then generally it is becoming the woman's burden to do so in our society. And this negatively affect the time they are that available for them to be allocated in a productive purposes. And okay, so male merchants reported higher incidence in disruption in supply chains, including import, as a reason why sales went down compared to female merchants. So this is just a minor thing, but then what we found is that male are more likely to report that the sales level, the decline of their sales level is associated more with the disruption in supply chains and import rather than female, something like that. While at the same time, we found some indication, but not significant issue that weak or lower demand is much more prevalent across female. This is something that we can relate with the previous hypothesis, is that female tends to reduce their own consumption, but at the same time they are selling the things that they are familiar to used to. So in the same time they face a higher supply, but at the same but also lower demand at the same time. So this issue is more prevalent among women, but although not statistically significant. And so the thing is that the interesting part of new female merchants that we have found to be outstanding compared to the rest, or becoming in that sense of positive outliers, is that we found that new male merchants has a different performs quite differently compared to the rest of the merchants. So the idea is that generally being the female decreased the likelihood of adopting e-commerce during the pandemic. But then we observed that for some group of female entrepreneurs, the take-up rates were higher. And who are those merchants who are joining during the pandemic? So we found that this type of new merchants who are joining after the pandemic, so after March 2020, they have a different characteristic compared to those who are already existing in the marketplace. So first, they were more predominantly are students or workers as part-time employees, and they also some of them are also full-time employees compared to the other women in general. So three type of groups: so students, part-time employees, and full-time employees. And why do they join this e-commerce after the pandemic? We can see that these particular female entrepreneurs were looking for alternative source of income because perhaps due to the school closures, it provide more free time for students to join their parents or even making their own business and jump to e-commerce. While for other employees, for example, like part-time and full-time employees who has worked in a formal employment, because of the reduction in working hours or reduction in income, they have to look for another means of generating income. So they turn into e-commerce on top of they have a more free time to do so. So this incident is not observed in females who were self-employed doing household work or non-workers. So basically, these new type of female merchants are different, are coming from different demographics characteristics compared to the pre-existing ones. And they do have some some intrinsic advantages compared to the traditional female merchants who are self-employed or homemakers. So female student merchants are found to switch product categories more often compared to the male students or other type of merchants, which is associated with a higher business performance. And also for the part-time and full-time employees, because of they have been in formal employment before, and as we know in the labor force in general, women who are already in formal employment are more likely to be more educated. It means that these new type of merchants are actually having a higher level of education compared to the pre-existing merchants. And with a higher level of education, we presumably think that they might have a better innate skill to perform well in e-commerce compared to the less educated ones. And this might lead to better sales performance across the new merchants. And indeed, we found that in terms of sales performance in November, we see that new merchants outperform pre-existing merchants. So they have a better sales level compared to the pre-existing merchants. And even within new merchant itself, new female merchants outperform new male merchants. So in this particular area, where in the new merchants, female are actually performing better than male. And new female merchants also outperform pre-existing female merchants. So they are more likely to be at the top 10% of the top performers of the in terms of sale level compared to the rest of the merchants. So generally, when we compare them to other type of merchants, they are generally having a better performance. These new female merchants. Okay, so on top of the new female merchants, we're also interested in how did female merchants cope with the pandemic in terms. So how do they adjust their strategy? What kind of actions did they choose in order to survive during the pandemic? So as I mentioned before, merchants who switch product categories were associated with better sales performance. By switching, we mean that merchants who are previously selling one kind of product, they switch and they sell another entirely new category of product. So for example, when previously you are selling, let's say like, and we observe this very often during the early days especially on the pandemic, when people are usually they sell one type of product before, maybe like electronics. Now, because of the pandemic, they start to sell masks and hand sanitizers. So this is one type of things that we call it as a switching. If you switch during the switch your product categories, we have found that merchants who do so were associated with better sales performance. So they have a lower probability to be in the bottom 40% of sales performance. They have higher probability to be in the top 10 performance, and lower sales decline in total sales between April and November. So switching helps them to maintain their level of sales better than those who are not switching. And the thing is that female merchants had a higher incidence of switching product category, driven by female students who had a higher probability of switching product categories than any other type of merchants. So this type of strategy, this switching strategy, is more prevalent across female students. And this thing we hypothesize that this higher prevalence is associated with that first student in general are more likely to sell products that are not associated with a big initial investment. So they do not have to put a lot of investment to buy their products. That's why they are able to they do not have to spend too much resources to buy one type of product. It means that they can switch their product lineups quite easily. They do not have to make a lot of investment in it, initial investment in it. And second, certain product categories that female student might be familiar with, like food and beverage, care and beauty, are quite also experiencing high demand. And in terms of the perception of how female merchants are actually closing their business, so we found that female merchants kept their business closed for relatively longer, more than over than 3 months. So we can see that on the right-hand side here, female merchants, 31.4% of female merchants are more reporting that they closed their business more than 3 months, and possible reasons compared to the male, which is only 24%, and possible reasons may be related with that. First, they have lack of business loans or credits or networks, which hampers their business operation because they could not obtain any loans to sustain their operation. And second, because of busy with other household responsibilities like taking care of children who do online schooling, and because of school has been moved online, and which means that students are studying inside their own houses, then and parents need to take care of it, and because of the social norms, a lot of these burdens are allocated to women. They need to close their business longer relatively than men. And three, some products categories that female merchants were associated with, such as women fashion, were hit hard because of the pandemic. So they are experiencing, again, lower demand on their product category, which means that they have to go lower sales, and at some point it means a business closure for some. And but not all female merchants were vulnerable to closing this business. So female merchants who were full-time employees were less likely to ever close their business compared to the male merchants. One possible reason because is that maybe we think that when females are working full-time, it means that they can also have a higher level of saving that can be used to sustain their business for longer compared to those who are not in a full-time employment. So it's not all females that experiencing this closure, but one group that we found to be not really associated with this longer closure is the full-time employees. And then there's no apparent differences in terms of how male merchants perceive business sustainability going forward if current condition persisted. So it means that there's no gender differences in how they perceive their business will sustain if the current condition or the pandemic still persisted at the point of the survey, which is during November 2020. And on the last bit, we also want to see how and what types of business support and government assistance were received and desired, and is there any differences between men and women across these dimensions. So first is that in terms of distributions of how merchants receive government assistance during the pandemic, we found that female merchants had a higher incidence of applying government assistance than male merchants. So in this left-hand side graph, you can see that female are more likely to obtain their government assistance, they need to register or apply first, compared to male, which is reporting a higher incidence of that they receive the government assistance even without needing to apply first. Which means that female are more likely to need to do an active action, which is applying to obtain government support compared to men. While male merchants have higher incidence of using TV and radio to access information about government assistance than female merchants. And then there was no significant differences in type of government assistance received between female and male merchants. So we know that across during the pandemic, we have seen government providing a lot a diverse type of government assistance, including cash transfers, electricity subsidy, social security payment, debt or loan restructuring, cash for work program, tax deferral, and wage subsidy, and others. There are no significant differences in type of this government assistance received between female and merchants. So they are roughly similar, while most of them are reporting they receive cash transfers and seconded by the electricity subsidy. And among those who receive cash assistance program, only for the village and the conditional cash transfer program, male merchants appear to have higher incidence of receiving it rather than female merchants. And this could be associated with the type of this village unconditional cash transfer, or BLT Desa, as we know in Indonesia, which is allocated, delivered through the household head. And as we know that mostly household head in Indonesia are mostly male, so this could be related with that. But other than that, in other type of government assistance, we found no differences across men and women. Okay. And then also in terms of type of debt service restructuring program that received by male and woman, male and female. So we do not see any differences in what type of debt restructuring program that they receive. So first, they receive, both of them are reporting same level on receiving subsidized interest rate for new credit, or subsidized interest rate for existing credit, or extension of loan maturity and postponement of loan repayment. But as you can notice here, there are some caveats, which is a higher standard error because of the small subsample sizes that we have received on our respondents. So yeah, there are no differences in what type of debt restructuring program received by the male and female, but there are some differences in what kind of preferences between male and female on what type of government programs that they actually prefer to receive compared to when we compare them between male and female here. So on this graph, you can see on the most left-hand side, on your left-hand side, we have cash assistance here, which is reported to be preferred by 56.9% of male, and while only 63.7% preferred by male, which is statistically significantly higher for female. Which means that this program, cash assistance, is more preferred by female compared relative to male, although the level are actually similarly high. And on the extreme right-hand side here, you can see also the debt restructuring program, which is preferred by 9.2% of male, but only 5.6% of female are reporting to prefer debt restructuring program. And what kind of thing that we can see from this phenomenon is that male are actually preferring more on the debt restructuring program. Probably because of it is one of their concern, because of they have a better access to financing at first, and they have more likely to have taken some kind of loan compared to female. So this type of issues are more prevalent. Debt-related issues are more prevalent across male compared to female, which is explaining why they have some kind of preference over this program. And then female and male merchants also have slightly different preferences in terms of government assistance they hope to receive, while female merchants are slightly prefer to receive cash assistance and tax incentive, while male merchants prefer to, again, as previously, debt restructuring program, deferral on rental, government purchase, and other type of support. Okay. And in terms of top 3 business support program, male and female merchants reported equally that they want digital knowledge, skill, and training programs to be as a first priority. And second is sales and marketing program, and 3, cheaper and reliable logistics. There are no different preferences across female and male on top of these top 3 programs that they desire in the future. And generally, it highlights how important this digital knowledge or digital trainings are important. The importance of this type of trainings are for the digital merchants. And then, and the thing is that when one interesting thing that differs between female and male is that female are more likely to allocate their cash assistance. If we talk exclusively on cash assistance received by pre-employment card, food stamps, family hope program, and other type of cash assistance, they were more likely, being a female alone, more likely to allocate this cash assistance on saving compared to male merchants. So when a female receive cash assistance, they are more likely compared to men to put this to allocate this on saving compared to men. So in some sense, we can say that this prevalence of saving is higher across women compared to men. But in general, recipients of government cash assistance use their cash for usage in line with the program's goal. For example, like food vouchers are most likely for consumption, while productive fund for micro enterprises atau BPUM was most likely used for business. And okay, so across those 6 aspects that we have discussed, let me sum up with what are our key takeaways based on our survey. So the first one is that we acknowledge that e-commerce is still a small part of the entrepreneurship business, but rapidly growing across the years, especially during the pandemic time. And gender gaps, the second one, gender gaps are smaller in e-commerce platform than in offline business or enterprise population in terms of gender composition, business size, and being a primary breadwinner in the household. The thing is that gender gaps are smaller when we compare to the general trends in the labor market. And third one, the gender gaps in e-commerce platform, especially in sales performance, could be partly explained by occupational segregation and employment status. And fourth, there are some unexplained gender gaps in sales performance which demands more rigorous studies that we could do in the future. And fifth, among female merchants, there were some heterogeneities in terms of sales performance, coping mechanism, business resilience, and etc., indicating that female merchants, we should not see female merchants only as one aggregate or a group only. So I think, and this is the central key takeaway points in this presentation, is that even within female merchants, not all female merchants are equal. Some perform better than others, and some are coming from a different type of demographic than other. Then they perform quite differently on one another. So this require a more granular detail attention to detail on what kind of interventions that we could plan to do. And then positive deviance of some group of female merchants who did better than others across this group of female merchants, such as self-performance, coping mechanism, and business resilience. If we can do some more research on them, we could provide lessons learned on how female merchants could be supported in the future. So again, not all female merchants are equal. Some perform better than others, and different groups require different interventions. And for the next steps, what can we do as a policy recommendation is first to, again, as we see, this e-commerce landscape provides a big employment opportunity for women, and this can act for them as a pathway to return to the labor market and increase their participation in the labor market. First, we can try to promote and enhance online entrepreneurship by providing business trainings and mentoring programs, and offer accelerator programs for growth-oriented entrepreneurs. And second, improve participation of women in online entrepreneurship by tailor programs and business plan, training for women with young children, because their burden is primarily also on taking care of their young children. And as this prevent their better performance in their e-commerce business, we should also think on what kind of interventions that we can do on top of increasing the skills of the woman. We also need to reduce their burden of childcare, and also closing knowledge gaps further by conducting further studies on this specific group of women, different groups of women. Okay. Okay, thank you for listening to our presentations. I would like to return the floor to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanji and Monica. That was really important and interesting presentation with massive information, detailed information. So let's now move to Q&A. I saw some questions written. I'll read some of them, but first, if I can invite Professor Terry Hall from ANU to ask his question directly, if you don't mind, Terry.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you to both speakers for very clear presentation. I'm quite interested in the other side of the counter, rather than the merchant, the customer, and the degree to which gender of the customer is involved in your analysis. My question was really, is it the entrepreneur's preference in terms of the gender segregation of products, or is it the customer who's looking for a woman to sell female products and a male to sell automotive products or whatever? And if I could just tack on to that, have you asked any questions about the traditional institutions of arisan and the degree to which both males and females are involved in arisan, and the scale of the arisan groups? How much money is mobilized through arisan that is used for the businesses? Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Terry. I think Lydia Napitupulu's question is related to Pak Terry's first question. So let me read that question. That's also about gender segregation of products sold. So Lydia asked, females might choose feminine products because it's been shown in the past that during economic downturns, lipstick sales surge because people buy feel-good products. Perhaps females tend to be in feminine product category because they are more profitable, namely low effort, low cost, low barriers to entry. So let's respond to this question from Pak Terry and also Bu Lydia first. Maybe Monica, you go first.
Yeah. Thank you, Pak Terry and Ibu Lydia for the questions. We did not survey customers in our survey, but that is something that we would consider, I guess, for our incoming survey, if that's a possibility from Shopee side. It would be interesting actually to see the perspective of the customers. I don't have the answers whether consumers prefer to buy products or like traditional feminine products from female merchants rather than from male merchants. But I also wonder to what extent like they know whether the businesses are female owned or male owned. I guess when I buy like care and beauty products, for example, from some e-commerce platform, I don't know like whether it's female owned or male owned, and most of the times it's just the name of the shops, right? Not really the name of the owners. But maybe there's something intrinsic in terms of the specific brands or like specific quality that female may know better than male if they sell like traditional feminine products, that makes consumers to customers to buy products from the female owned traditional feminine products from female owned businesses. But that's something interesting, and yeah, again, that's like an idea for us to incorporate for our upcoming survey, just to see the perspective from the customer side. And regarding the question on arisan, we don't ask that question, Pateri, but we do have some digital financing questions in our upcoming survey. Particularly, we will ask whether merchants borrow from some of the two loan products that Shopee offer, and if not, like why not? Why they don't borrow from Shopee through these loan products? But this will be in our upcoming survey. We don't have that question in our survey right now, but I would be interested to hear from you, Pateri, like why you would expect that a lot of merchants actually get their capital from arisan, right? Yeah, I guess it's the traditional sort of like source of financing, right, for female merchants, female MSMEs. But it would be good to know if you have any like studies that show that a lot of like digital female merchants use arisan for their capital. And a question from Ibu Lydia regarding basically how female merchants choose traditionally feminine products because it's very popular during the pandemic. Again, like I think I don't have the conclusive answer to that, but my immediate reaction is that, for example, I don't know. For example, in the case of in this pandemic, right? Actually, female tend to reduce like these care and beauty products, right? Because for example, like lipstick, we wear masks. Like, why would you buy more lipsticks, right? So maybe this pandemic is different from the previous pandemic. I see actually we are reducing like buying clothes, for example. I don't know about females' experience here, but then I certainly do not buy like a lot of clothes during the pandemic. Certainly not like those clothes to go out. So I guess like what is maybe more common is the cloth mask, right? So maybe that falls under the category of women's fashion. That is like very popular during the pandemic. I think everybody, I mean, a lot of merchants switched to selling like this cloth mask. So yeah, I guess there's something different about this pandemic than other other economic crises that we might not necessarily be able to generalize the previous findings from other crises.
Thank
Maybe
you.
Sanji might want to add.
Sanji, over to you if you have something to add.
Yeah, just to add a little on Pak Terry's questions. Thank you, Pak Terry. Yeah, so regarding on arisan, we are also actually planning to do in our upcoming planned second round survey. We want to dig deeper on the financing source of each businesses and more generally how what kind of is there any kind of business pre-existing businesses that these e-commerce sellers are already having, and how do they fund their businesses during the pandemic and or during the first establishment of these online entrepreneurs. And that will be a very interesting suggestion for us to include the options of arisan to know whether is there any kind of role of social capital that promotes this kind of new entrepreneurs in place. So this is a very useful suggestions in my point of view, and but other than that, we also want to know like this other possible type of financing, for example, like inheritance, or is there any savings or severance payment that can be relocated for some workers who were fired during the pandemic? Are they using their severance payment, or are they using incentive from programs like cash assistance or any other kind of program? So generally, we want to see the source of capital from these businesses, and from that point we can carry on what kind of policy interventions are needed, in particular for women in this context, is on how should they, what kind of support we can provide for them before they can, so that they can establish their new businesses. Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Sanji. There is a question from Riana Miranti from University of Canberra, but she apologized that because she has to leave for a meeting. So I'm just gonna read the question to you and then convey the answer to her later on. So she was wondering if there are some regional variations on your findings, especially in terms of part-time and full-time employees. Maybe you can respond to that before we go to the next question.
Yeah, we have not looked at regional variations yet in our analysis, but we do have the provincial locations informations in our survey. We don't publish it here for confidentiality reason in terms of the distributions of merchants according to provincial location. But yeah, this is something that we will consider in our analysis.
So it was only down to province, not to district?
I think it's only province.
Okay.
Sanji, maybe you can remind me, but I think it's only province. But because we collaborate with Shopee, right, on this
Right.
survey, they should have like the exact locations of the merchants. Yeah.
Okay, I see Pak Terry probably has a follow-up question to the first one. Pak Terry, do you want to clarify or confirm? Silakan, Pak.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, because I appreciate the answers about the Arisan, and especially Sanji's comment about the development of social capital. I think the difference between Arisan and what might be regarded as a more narrow financial institution is that Arisan is very much a social contact. And through Arisan, small traders have the ability not only to mobilize capital, but also to mobilize knowledge about the business they're in, and to seek out other people who might be able to provide materials and also become customers. The Arisan in marketplaces versus the Arisan in families or RT/RW all have slight differences in the way that they're run and the way that the epidemic has hit them. I'd really like to know how much the epidemic has changed the way Arisan are held. Obviously, for things like the getting together as a group and sharing food, there's going to be some limitations. But are there similar limitations in the actual movement of the money? Do people continue the Arisan? And when they do get 5 million, 10 million rupiah in one go that they can use for investment, are they using that investment? That's the sort of question that I'd like to see in future surveys, so that we get some idea of how this traditional financial institution matches up with modern institutions. Sorry to go on so long. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's good, Pak Terry. Thank you so much. I think this is a good input for your next survey, right, Monica and Sanji. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. I see two questions there. Let me ask first, Ibu Ninu Bambudi from Kompas wants to ask her question directly, or should I just read it? Okay, I will read Ibu Ninu's question. Ibu Nini was wondering whether feminine product actually may give better profit for female merchants because of easier entry. Female merchants are familiar with the product more. The difference between male merchants and female merchants in terms of profit probably is because of the productivity, since women tend to have double burden. So they have extra burden that affects their productivity. So that's why their profit is also lower than the male counterparts. Before you answer that question, let me invite Sherry Tao Kong from Peking University to ask her question. Sherry, are you there?
Yes, thank you
Okay,
very
go ahead.
much. Thank you so much for the talk, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Can I just ask a quick question? I was wondering, in addition to the heterogeneity, you guys have talked about female merchants, be it age, education, job experiences, whether there's a major distinction between those who actually aspire to scale up their businesses, like they are real female entrepreneurs, if you like, as opposed to those who just do this on the side and they have no intention to scale up, to make it a big business. They just want to keep it small as a side job. And I wonder if this distinction is quite important in understanding why they have very different sales performance, why they choose different strategies. For example, you mentioned they switch categories, and they try to find better ways to make to improve their sales or increase their profit. And also they would like to have a different kind of assistance, be it financial assistance or technical assistance. So they will have a very different behavior as well as aspiration. So I would think that will be an important aspect to be taken into account when you analyze all these variations. So that's more a question, and also also a comment in relation to the almost like a financial assistance, availability of financial assistance or loans, be it Arisan or digital finance assistance from the platform. I thought one interesting observation we see in China here, looking at digital merchants or small and micro businesses people, is that whenever they can, the majority of them still would like to use their saving or borrowing money from their family and friends to finance their business, instead of borrowing from financial institutions, be it traditional financial institutions or even from the platform, even though the platform has made it very easy, very quick, and very much readily available, and they have better ways to manage the risk. I think a lot of small business people still prefer to do it from their private circles, and that's just an observation. But it is changing, so I think it is very much a valuable aspect to keep watching to see how it evolves and what people takes up, what kind of financial assistance. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Monica or Sanji, back to you.
Yeah. First of all, hi Ibu Ninuk, hi Sherry. Thank you for joining this webinar. So in regards to Ibu Dinuk comments and question, so I don't know if feminine product actually give better profits because it's easier to enter, because the easier it is to enter, right, the less barriers it is to enter a product category, then the more competition you have, and then the more like cutting through prices that you have to offer, especially in general. Like this is not yet proven, but my hunch is that competition online is even more fierce than competition offline, because you could see the prices of your competitors, reviews, right? So the easier it is to enter, the more fierce the competition is, so that the lower profit you have, right? But in regards to productivity, because more female merchants are homemakers, that they have this, like what you call like as double burden. That is something that we are studying in our next survey. So we have several questions to ask basically, or to learn more how female merchants and male merchants do business differently online. So we have questions in regards to, for example, how many times they check competitors' prices, how many times they adjust their prices when they see their competitors' prices, and when there are like price changes, how often they respond to customers, how much effort they put in terms of writing their product description and product display pictures. So this is kind of like behaviors that we want to see, and see differences between male and female merchants in our upcoming survey. So we don't have yet the answers, but yeah, the hypothesis is that this sort of like care responsibility of women might sort of like reduce their time spent on doing business operations in e-commerce. So for on Sherry's questions, thanks so much, Sherry. Yeah, so as we mentioned in the slide, so one of our hypotheses is that many of or at least more female merchants are entrepreneurs by necessity, not entrepreneurs by growth, right? Like the study done in I forgot the name of the countries, but in Africa shows that personal initiative trainings or soft skills trainings to develop like growth mindset among merchants potentially have bigger impacts on female entrepreneurs than male entrepreneurs. Also, although the result shows that it's not yet significant, but they're like the impact is bigger among female merchants. So this is something that we are trying to experiment as well with Shopee, but again, the difficulty is that this kind of like random control trial, rigorous experimentation to test personal initiative training is quite like a long journey, right? It takes like at least 1.5 to 2 years to actually get the result. This is something that we've talked about with Shopee to do, but it's still something that still on the agenda. But again, it will be like very interesting to do like this more rigorous sort of like RCT experimentation on personal initiative training to see if like growth mindset development training makes an impact on merchants, especially female merchants. I guess another things that I would like to add on top of like the fact that female merchants might be less likely to have growth mindset compared to male merchants is the fact that they have like specific challenges, right? I mean, one of them is care responsibility that we've discussed previously. But for example, I don't know, there could be other specific challenges that are not the case for male merchants that might might affect their sales performance. So these are like the what we call like the unobservables that we would like to understand better in our upcoming survey, and potentially more rigorous experimentation going forward. So yeah, thanks for sharing the result from your survey in regards to this like risk averse like behaviors that merchants still want or still try to use their savings instead of using like more formal loans available. I guess my immediate comment is we don't have this risk sharing analysis, but in our upcoming survey, we asked like a couple of questions just to test their risk sharing behaviors as well. I find it actually interesting, from your result, Sherry. I find it interesting that we have this kind of like a paradox, which means that why people are risk averse in terms of borrowing when they use it for businesses, for their business operations, but they are very risk loving when they use it for consumption. So as you know, like with fintechs, right? With very famous like online fintechs and everything, we know that people do have like risk loving behaviors when it comes to consumption. But why they're very risk averse when it comes to business operation? Maybe it's bigger loans, but yeah, something that is interesting. Thanks. Sanji, do you want to add?
Yeah, just want to add a little bit in response to Ibu Ninuk's question. So yeah, on the point of whether feminine product actually may give better profit for female merchants because of easier entry, I do think the point of easier entry is one of the strongest aspects in e-commerce. So which means that everybody can enter and quit the market easily. But we also need to take into account that the e-commerce exhibit what the phenomenon of one winner takes all. So in e-commerce, usually you can see that there are some factors that consumers can observe before they decide to purchase from which seller. So first is the price itself, and the second one is the rating of the sellers itself. So in this e-commerce landscape, once one sellers become a really very big in terms of they have made a lot of sales and they made quite a good ratings, and they can also sell quite cheap. People will flock into that sellers, and that will make it very hard for new entrants to compete and the only strategies available for them to compete with this bigger seller is again back to what Bu Monica has mentioned, to have some cutthroat prices here. So the margin will be very low available for any kind of product that exhibit this category, this issue. But then when we compare male and female characteristics, we know that because of female, they have less time to sell because of their responsibility. This I agree with you that this could lead to the differences in their productivity, because their total productivity for male is higher than female, because simply they have more time to work on selling more products, even though similar level of product that has marginally very small profit. So I do think that the issue is more on the time available for women versus men, rather than the type of products or the that is associated with higher income or not, something like that.
Thank you so much. There is no more question. There is a comment from Lydia. I'm not sure if Lydia wants to chip in. Well, I'll just read her comment. It's true that cosmetics are down, but skincare, health products are also feminine categories, right? These are more popular during pandemic, and women traditionally buy health products for their family. Also, Shopee seems to be promoting these feminine categories in their ads. including through their choice of celebrities who are in their ads. Perhaps this is endogenous because the platform is very familiar. I think that's an input to your research. I was interested, if I'm not mistaken, in one of your slides, there is an information about these female merchants tend to save the cash assistance money if they get it, right, compared to their male counterparts, right? Isn't that, well, if I'm a macro advisor to the government, that's not a very encouraging news, because when in the time of economic downturns, you want these people to spend their money, their cash assistance money, to stimulate the economy rather than save them, right? So any comment on that?
I think in general, I don't remember the literature baca, but I think in general, women think more about long-term,
Right.
long-term sort of like agenda more than male. I mean than men. So yeah, I mean the finding is not too surprising to me, because if they think long term, then they might think about like, oh yeah, you know, I have some cash now, I better put it aside, I better put some aside, you know, for my children's school, you know, in the near future, right? Instead of like spending everything now. So I don't know. Yes, I guess that kind of like counters government's effort in terms of stimulating demand, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of like giving cash to stimulate demand. But at the same time, well, savings could also be good, right, for medium, even like long term of their households' future. So yeah, I don't know the correct answer to that.
Yeah, something for research.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, is there any other questions or comments from the audience? Sherry, why don't you ask again? And then after that, Firman Witular.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a very quick question. I was still wondering, you know, in many cases of these micro small businesses, they have husband wife, this kind of you know, setup. And do you categorize them as a male merchant or female merchant? How do you distinguish the thing?
Okay, quick reaction, Monica, before we go to Firman.
That's a good question. So I guess well, in the survey, let me check. In the survey, how we ask about gender is actually just basically gender of the respondents.
So yeah, whoever
right?
answered the question, right?
Right. Yeah, we don't actually ask like basically who owned this business and what's the gender of that owner, right? So yeah, whoever is actually answering the survey. But we believe that the ones who are answering the survey are the active merchants, because this survey is blasted through Shopee sellers apps. So these are like basically the apps that sellers use and read. Not regular like apps that we see. So this is like specific apps. So again, but you're right. We don't know whether it's owned by like actually whether the respondents actually own the business.
Yeah, but if you have characteristics of the businesses, so for example, how many people they employ, right? Sometimes they only have a family member and they don't actually employ, you know, paid workers and things like this. And then you can to some extent maybe control for this. And not to mention online services, you may have female or male merchants who are more likely to respond to you. Or I mean, this kind of sample selection thing, maybe you can check with their background information from the platform, so you know what
Yeah.
you are observing is actually quite,
Yeah.
unbiased and representative to some
Yeah.
extent. Yeah.
Yeah, but I know that in other Shopee surveys, I don't know if they use their own like information, meaning like their internal information to identify gender. But in their other survey, it also shows that basically female merchants dominates the number of merchants.
Oh,
Okay.
really? Wow, cool. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Sherry and Monica. Over to Firman.
Hi, Monica. Yes, the first question is actually very similar to Sherry. Just getting more information about how who works in the business is pretty important. I think for the second survey, who's helping them, how many people, who's doing the packaging and going to Tiki, and that sort of thing. But the second question is, or with in your second survey, are you planning to ask things that are more like what is the good business practice kind of thing? Like, do you separate your accounts between your business and savings countries? Because this gets at that question about how women use their income from the businesses or from social assistance, whether they do separate accounts and other very standard good business practice for small entrepreneurs. I think that's the one question and one, well, both are suggestions. Thank you.
Thanks, Firman. Seems like your questionnaire will grow tremendously, Monica.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Sanji, go ahead.
Yeah, Pak Firman. Yeah, we do plan to ask those questions. Like first, whether the enterprise separate their personal and business accounts, and also on how many paid workers, how many unpaid workers are involved in the business. But we do not plan to take it as far as on asking how many people are handling the logistics and how many people are handling the packaging, because within that are going to be too long. And yeah, the main idea on this second round survey is that we want to dig deeper on the business characteristics and have a better knowledge on how do they do their business, are they separating their account, and what kind of business practices that they are doing, like for example, like are they using the features available in Shopee, for example, like advanced features that involve data analytics and trend predictions, and just to make some tools that has been provided by many platforms to see what is going on in the market and what kind of product has been most sold. We do ask those questions. And also regarding to financing questions, we are also including that in the 90 questions that we have discussed. I mentioned to you before. So yes, the source of financing is aligned with and the source of financing of this business is also included on those. And one thing that maybe we need to add is Pak Terry's suggestions on whether there are any sources of funding from arisan activities or similar stuff. Yeah. Okay, over to you, Monica.
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, great. Thanks. There is one last question there written. That's from Rahmat about capacity building on hacking. Is it needed to have some capacity building for understanding cybersecurity for these female merchants to avoid hacking or things like that?
Oh, I think Sanji can answer this better.
Okay, Sanji.
It's a
Well, yeah. Well,
on
to be honest,
hacking businesses.
No. Yeah, well, to be honest, I'm not an expert in this cybersecurities and cybersecurities stuff, but in general, what we want to see is that a training on related on digital skills, and yes, indeed, one digital security is part of one prominent digital skills on top of like problem solving and data analytics and also collaborative capabilities. So yes, digital security is one of the thing, and we do in terms of interventions. I think this if we discuss on interventions on increasing digital skills, we talk about all aspects of digital skills. So it's not only cybersecurity, but also on how to collaborate with other people in the cloud platform or problem solving techniques. And I think in general, this is something that we need to do in the future. And on how to give a capacity building regarding to, I think this relates on the delivery method of how do we deliver this enhancement of digital skills. And there are a lot of channels that we can actually test as part of study in the future. For example, like the personal initiative training that has been mentioned by Monica. It has been done. It has not yet been done virtually, and we will still wonder on whether virtual trainings will be effective in the future on delivering these digital skills, or is there any kind of delivery methods that is more effective to conduct this training. We honestly, we are not yet. We do not have any knowledge yet on that, but this is something that I think will be interesting field of research in the future, how to deliver digital trainings effectively.
Excellent. Well, on behalf of Indonesia Project, thank you so much, Ibu Monica, Pak Sanji, for excellent presentation, and also to the audience for excellent discussion. So I hope you all keep healthy and stay safe. And let me turn this back to Nuka, who might have some announcement. Go ahead, Nuka.
Thank you, everyone. With this, we conclude this year's global seminar series from us, and we start again next year with the survey of recent developments by Ryan Edwards from ANU and Alin Halimatu Sadia from Universitas Indonesia in mid-January. I would like also to announce that besides the focus on the gender equality and social inclusion and COVID recovery, next year there will be a third focus of global seminar, which is on climate change. So we welcome topic suggestions. Just send us an email. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll end this now.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, Sanji.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.